Suprabhatam, I think this was not really required by it, but for some reason you need a formal introduction. But I think the relationship that has grown in the last 3-4 days has transcended the borders of formalism, because in the Bharatiya Bhumi, in the Bharatiya Satya, it is actually heart to heart. I have a small presentation today on the topic called the Vastu Tatha Sthapatya Kala. So if we can switch over, yeah, so that is a presentation. This is one area of Bharatiya Gyan Pranali, which is Indian architectural knowledge systems. And I think within a short time, with my little capacity and small understanding, which I have gathered in the last 25 to 30 years, as a student of architecture and planning, maybe I'll share a few of the things. Of many domains of Indian knowledge system, Vastu Kala, which is the science of built environment, and Sthapatya Kala, which is the science of construction and installation. And then we also have allied kalas like Nandan Kala, the science of Indian aesthetics. And then we have many other things which surrounds it from all around, which is Artha Shastra, which is the Indian concept of economics, Parivesh Vidya, the Indian idea of environmental sciences, and the ecological sciences, and finally cosmology, which is Khagol Vigyan, and the whole of cosmic and macrocosmic sciences. I don't know how to start, but I'll just quote a small sutra by Mahayogeshwar Gorakshanath ji, and he says like this. I'll try. I'm not good at Sanskrit, but I've picked up a bit of it. It goes like this. It says, Antar Shunna Bahi Shunna Shunna Kumbha Ibambare, and Antapurna Bahir Purna Purna Kumbha Ivarnave, which says like if this is a kumbha, a container, then either it is empty inside and empty outside, and the connection between the inside and the outside is like a huge space, an eternal space, which in Indian knowledge system we call Chidakasha. That means a space of consciousness. Or it could be filled up with water, which is like water inside and water outside, which is like if you put a pitcher in a huge ocean with waves, so there's water inside and water outside, it looks like Ivarnave. So there are two ways of looking at the ultimate reality, which is either it is floating in free space in Chidakash, or it's floating in filled up space, which is Chit Shamudra. So it is up to you the way you look at it. You look at space void inside, space void outside, or you look at in the way that it's filled up with consciousness inside and filled up with consciousness outside. So in other words, it gives an idea of consciousness both as space and also as a vibrant principle. So that brings us to two fundamental principles of Indian knowledge systems. One is Akasha, which is space itself, and one is Prana, which is the vibration of consciousness. So all that we see in the words of one of the greatest philosophers ever born in the history of humankind, that is Maharshi Kapila. So everyone from Lord Buddha, Gautama Buddha, to Swami Vivekananda, and everyone in the West, from Plato to the Alexandrian school of philosophy, to Plotinus, Spinoza, and others, have been influenced by Kapila. And Kapila says this entire universe is a combination of the two factors, which is Khetra, which is the container, and the Khetragya, which is something which is contained inside. So the Khetra is the Akash, and the Khetragya is the Prana, the subtle vibrations. So Maharshi Kapila denominates the entire composition of the universe as a latent composition between Prana and Akasha. I'll just spend a minute over it. Just imagine a student has come to IIT Kharagpur. I am a student of IIT Kharagpur. And IIT Kharagpur looks alien to me. I mean, I don't know the hostels, and somebody is saying they'll transfer you from TGH to SAM. So there's a big question mark there. And Richadi is sometimes looking at you, sometimes she's thinking about something else. And then you approach me, I don't have a clear answer. Things like that. So what happens? There is an amplitude, there's a huge gap between prana and akasha. That means your urges and the space, which is IIT Kharagpur. But then one day, Richadi says, okay, let me have a talk with the guest house person. Let me have a talk with the food person. Let me see that you get some hot soup in the evening and you feel comfortable. So the amplitude reduces between prana and akasha, between IIT Kharagpur, which is prana, and you as a container, because you are holding the experience called IIT Kharagpur. So akasha is holding the experience called prana. So the amplitude between prana and akasha reduces. And then one day happens that you become ingrained in the ethos of IIT Kharagpur, and you develop a relationship. Maybe you're invited one day as a speaker or as an expert, and somebody says, "Ab to aaya the," as an FDP participant. So why don't you come this time as an FDP speaker? And you feel elated. So that means your relationship between the relationship between IIT Kharagpur and yourself, it becomes lesser, it becomes smaller and smaller. That means the amplitude, like a pendulum, it's like a pendulum. So at the lower phase of the pendulum, the distance between the swing, which is the kinetic energy, is very large. But as you go up in the pendulum, in the triangle, the distance between the swing reduces and reduces. And until and unless you reach the apex of the pendulum, where there's hardly any distance between the left and the right, between prana and akasha, and you are almost IIT Kharagpur at that point. Everything that happens to your life, every achievement that you do, every service that you render, whether it's IIT Kharagpur or Bharatvarsh, you are that object itself. There's a convergence between the two. I'll give you one example at this point. One day, Miss Margaret Noble, who was known as Sister Nivedita, I'm sure you've heard about her, asked Swami Vivekananda, "Swamiji, how can I serve you? How can I serve you?" Swamiji said, "You don't have to serve me. I don't have any identity. Serve Bharatvarsha, serve India. In that sense, you serve me." So Nivedita just looked at Swami Vivekananda, and it took about 10 years for her to understand that Swami Vivekananda was personified Bharatvarsha. He represents the arjas and the sarjas of Bharatvarsha. That means Swamiji had reached a point where there is no difference between the object and the subject. Swamiji himself, his every movement, someone like Sri Aurobindo, someone like Ramana Maharshi, someone like Gautama Buddha, someone like Adi Shankaracharya, someone like Acharya Ramanujam, they represent Bharatvarsha. They are Bharatvarsha. So when you look at them, when you look at these great preachers of humanity, you look at India, you look at itself. So India is not a geographical identity. India is not a political economic space. It represents a way of life. So the amplitude between the prana and the akasha, between the kshetragya and the kshetra, diminishes to zero, and the kinetic energy, that means the gap between the two extremes, finally collapses and it becomes one. So from kinetic energy, you move to potential energy. You reach omnipotence. You reach omnipotence. That is why Swamiji said, every soul is potentially divine, but we are not aware of it. The whole goal is to make it kinetic, so that one day you reach and understand there is something inside you which is potentially divine, and you become one with that. Yesterday, Swami Vedhanandaji was speaking whether you take Advaitavad, whether you take Visheshtadvaitavad, or you take the path of Sankhya, or you take the Bhakti, it doesn't matter. You just take any one of the rivers based on your impression, your sanskara. And the Gita says, Je jathamang prapaddante tangsthaiva bhajamaham Mama Bhattanuvante Partha Manushya Sarvashya, which means there's only one ocean, there's a one and only ocean, but the paths could be different in different times and space. So there are different ways to reach that one truth. Whether you are doing it through physics, or you are doing it through meditation, or you are doing it through psychology, but you reach that one truth. So if you can reach that one truth in different space and time by using different paths, that is something what you call science, Jnana Vijnana Yoga. The definition of science is a truth which can be approached by different means and contents and applications in different space and time contexts. So a person who is a true scientist will never say that my path is the only path and other paths are not true. In the words of Sri Ramakrishna, there's a beautiful allegory. Sri Ramakrishna says, everybody wants to say that my watch is giving the right time. I mean, I say, you say, she says. But time and again, we have to tune the watch with the sun. The sun is absolute, which is beyond all watches. So different prophets, different avatars, different Vadas has talked about the same truth, but they all have to, the personified gods, the avatars and the prophets and the Shastras, they all have to tune it to the impersonal, the transcendental. So the complete truth is a combination of the personal smriti and the impersonal, which is sruti. So our Indian knowledge system is a combination of space and time, which is smriti, and beyond space and time, which is sruti, which is sanatana. So that's why the Vedas, they transcend even the avatars, even the great prophets. They remain there. The Vedas are not books. At certain point of history, the tattva of Agni became the Rig Veda, and the tattva of Vayu became the Jajur Veda, and the tattva of Surya became the Sam Veda, and the tattva of Soma, Amrita, became the Atharva Veda. But finally, these tattvas are the eternal principles. So coming to today's topic, as you approach that one truth via various paths, one path, just one path, very humbly, just one path is Vastukala. It's architectural sciences. It is just one of many. It is just one of many. That does not mean this is the only path. And it also does not mean that it doesn't have any meaning or significance. So today, in the next 40 minutes or so, and you give me a warning if I transcend time and go to the Sruti level and go beyond 45 minutes, then I'll come back to Smriti, which is space and time. So let's move on. So Indian architectural knowledge systems is one of the many paths which takes you to the truth. And beautifully speaking, Indian architectural knowledge system has its origin right in the Srutis, right in the original texts, right in the first sermons that comes from the thousands of Brahma Rishis like Vashishta, Agastya, Bharadwaj, and many others who belong to a special clan, what Sri Aurobindo says, the 7 sages of the Angirashas, the Sapta Rishis. I mean, the 7 sages represent the 7 colors, the 7 hues, the 7 tones, the 7 strokes, the 7 musical tantuja. They represents the master 7, which gets repeated. Sri Aurobindo calls it's a saptam, septuplet. It's a sapta. There is one slide where I have tried to explain this in a certain way, which we have done at IIT Kharagpur, and that is picking up some universal attention. So let's move on. Get stuck. Yeah. So, as someone said, one of my previous esteemed speaker, I think it was on the first day, the first relationship between which exists in this universe is the relationship between Kshetra and Kshetragya. Kshetra is us, and Kshetragya is the thing inside us. Sometimes Kshetra is the universe and Kshetragya is we in the universe. And the first question that we ask is, What are we and what is the relationship with the universe? Atha Brahma Jigyasa. What are we and what is the relationship between the universe? And is the highest definition of an answer to this relationship, does it represent absolute Brahman? So in this relationship, architecturally speaking, there are two sides of it. As I told you, prana and akasha. So prana is our impulse to know more, to become more knowledgeable, and to really approach at the thing. And akasha is the breadth of the knowledge. When the two are one, pran becomes chit, and akash becomes chidakasha. They become one. So you can see it either in the form of an eternal space, or you can see it in the form of eternal vibration. So what you see here is a fantastic emulation, what you call Vijnana, Jnana Vijnana Yoga in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. What you see is a combination of two things. I mean, just look at this container. The container is incomplete without the lower part, and the container is also incomplete with the upper crown. Are you getting it? So the entire container is complete with an unknown thing which comes and completes. If you just keep it like this, the container slowly loses significance. The water inside will get polluted. And if I just keep this all alone, this also doesn't have any meaning. But if I bring in the upper crown with the lower crown, it gets a meaning. It gets a meaning. So the upper crown of the understanding is the whole universe, the macrocosm, the Chidakasha, which exactly we don't see, but we see the material form of it, which is the Bhutakasha. At night, when you look up, you see the galaxies and the constellations. So this is the upper crown. In the Veda, we call it the Du, the Dava. And the lower crown is our existence. I mean, I'm standing here. This is my existence. That is the Prithvi, the art consciousness. That is the Prithvi Chetana. So the upper crown is reflecting on the lower crown, and the lower crown is trying to respond back to the upper crown. This is the whole mystery, this relationship. This is called Deva Prithivi in the Rig Veda, in the Atharva Veda. So the whole journey is from Khand, disjointed Deva Prithivi, to Akhand Deva Prithivi. So the whole journey is from Bhutakash, disjointed materialism, to jointed integralism, which is Chidakash. So that is the whole ascent. What I said about 5 minutes back, the whole journey is from a huge amplitude between prana and akasha to an apex where prana is akasha, akasha is prana. That is called nirvikalpam. I mean, nirvikalpa samadhi or nirvikalpa chitana. The whole meditation is actually that, where prana becomes one with akasha. And you are not able to say whether prana is akasha and akasha is prana. Why? Because there is no one to say that. Because even the Sakshi melts, the river melts into the ocean. That is the whole point of that dimensionless point. So this upper crown, the whole cosmos, gets imprinted on the lower crown. This is the whole foundation of Vastu Kala and Sthapatya Kala. So for thousands and thousands of years, sir, sages and sage-like people who also have an inclination to build, they have reflected the plan of the cosmos on the ground. I'm saying it again. They have reflected the plan of the cosmos. The night sky, the day sky, the midnight sky, the afternoon sky. The afternoon sky is the Madhya Nindan. The morning sky is the Usha, the Gayatri Chanda. The evening sky is the Sandhya Chanda. The Madhyaratri, Mahanisha, night sky, midnight, 12 o'clock is the Mahanisha Chanda. So all these time clocks are also space clocks. And they're reflecting this on the ground and getting certain ideas. And so there is one which is coming down from above, and there's a response in terms of its detailing on the ground, which are the diagrams and the footnotes and the footprints, say the shape of this room where we are all sitting. This room could be an architecture that reflects the architecture of the cosmos. Like Matri Mandir in Auroville, or maybe Uttarayan in Shantiniketan, designed by Ravindranath, or maybe Arco Santi, designed by Paulo Soleri in Arizona, are responses, or the Pyramid of Giza, responding to the constellation above. They are all reflections of a cosmic diagram on the ground. So the whole thing is a counter response of the Satyam Ritam Brihat and then Antaram Naiva Janayat, Chandra Chandrika Riva. So that means that huge Brihat, Mahat Mahoriyan, the Kathopanishad says, Anu Anoriyan. Macro of the macro and the micro of the micro. The two are constantly responding. This is the whole crown, the whole foundation of our Vedic episteme, the tree, Urdhva Madhyashakam. I'll come to that. So if you bring it to science, analytical science, structured science, detailed science, the whole thing, the whole distribution of the stars, the movement of the stars, something which possibly Professor Mahesh Ji and Professor Rama Bral, K. Subramaniam Ji were explaining in their talks. I'm sure they did it. That is the detailing coordinates of the night sky, because we see the sky in the night. In the morning, we don't see it, but there is a sky, but because of the sunlight, we don't see it. It's actually coordinated in a whole spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet of coordinates, X and Y and time, X and Y. So that is the matrix of the cosmos. In the Vedas, we call it the Matarisha Dadhati, that is Isha Upanishad. So Sri Aurobindo says, Matarisha is the word which leads to the word Mataris or matrix. It's the origin of the word. Prajapati Bhuha Rashmin. So the Rishi, the Brahma Rishi becomes a Prajapati. So he marshals, he arranges the cosmic rays in the order of things, in the matrix of things. A1, 2, A1, A11, A12. You know what is a matrix in mathematics. So they're rows and they're columns. And it's like the the mother has conceived the child. So the of the mother is the matrix inside. Matarisha Dadhati. So the word matrix in the Rig Veda and in the Sama Veda, in the Yajur Veda, represents the mother who is conceiving the universe. And the Bhrigus, the great sages of the Saptarishis, brings down Agni from above by virtue of, so it's a descent. In response to that, the rishis here on this side, they make the diagram, which is the topology, the topological collapse. So I sit in a drawing studio, I sit in a computer, and I sit with a spreadsheet with pens and croquille and markers to put that drawing on my piece of paper. So that is called topology. So the matrix is collapsing from outside, and the topology is a response to the matrix. So this is the whole science of the Vastuveda. So the entire coordinate system, which is above, is reflected on the coordinates of my AutoCAD software or of my Lumion software, through which I'm building the Taj Mahal, or maybe I'm building the Temple of Giza, or I'm building the Matri Mandir, which is a response to the universe. So Sri Aurobindo says this is the Unmana and this is the Samana. So the confluence between the two, the matrix and the topology, leads to the foundation, the hour of God, the foundation of the hour of God. And the whole Matri Mandir, for example, it's just an example, is an expression of this two-way response. And this is the foundation of the Vastukala. And this is the whole foundation of the entire thing. Sources and texts. Let's look at the sources and text. So the upper crown is based on something which today has come into the purview of scientific calculation, which we call archaeoastronomy, which shows that the Earth is actually like a gyroscope. So in addition to its own movements around the axis, leading to day and night, which is rotation, and the movement around the sun. So this is 1 day, 1 night, 1 day, 1 night, and this is 365 days, 1 year, 365 days, 1. There is a third rotation of the axis around the galactic north. And it takes about 26,000 years approximately for the Earth to come back again to that position. So this is called the precession of the equinox. So geocentric, heliocentric precession of the equinox. 1 day, 1 night, 365 days, 26,000 years. Yuga Parivartan. Yuga Parivartan. So today, the astronomical softwares of the TIFR, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, I'm just taking some time with the initial slides. The latest slides I'll go like this. It's almost the same thing. They found out that there are certain sutras in the Rig Veda, for example, the 7th mandala, where Atreya Rishi has seen the Ashwini nakshatras coming at dawn. So when the TIFR software calculates that, it finds that that event had occurred 8,770 years back prior to the birth of Christ, plus 2,000 years. So if you want to see it again in the sky, you have to wait for 26,000 minus 8,770 plus 2,000 years. So today, by virtue of the archaeoastronomical softwares, you are able to position those observations because you cannot imagine them. And they found that the Ashwini Nakshatras at a particular constellation orb was visible at a particular eastern horizon. And if you want to get the same position, you have to wait for 26,000 years. So this is a cosmic diagram, and this is an Atreya Rishi who is not Atri Rishi. So from the Atri Parampara, so that means he alone had existed somewhere about 10,770 years back. So that means the Saptarshi Yuga was much prior to that, much prior. We have no idea. So that takes the Indian civilization to that point. So today, the people who have actually forged the Aryan invasion myth and have actually made a different version of Indian history, they are getting rattled. They are getting cornered. They are feeling very uneasy because this entire manipulation by colonial historians is about to collapse. Because science is proving science. Science is proving the science of the Vedas. So this is the upper crown. Now let's look at the lower crown. The lower crown is actually a topological collapse. So this entire upper crown comes down and gets a footprint. And the Vedas talk about a symmetry of that. And there are many sutras. I'll just focus on one sutra. It's called the Skambha Sutra. And the Skambha Sutra comes in the Rig Veda and the Atharva Veda. And it gives you the perfect direction of the collapse of light, the column of light, which you can say is the Shiva Lingam or the Jyotirlingam. The whole idea of that is actually the Skambha, which is the whole pillar of light from the infinite to the finite. I mean, Rabindranath Tagore composes that in a Bengali song, and he says, Shimar Maje Ashim to me. He says, within the finite, I see you the infinite. I mean, beautiful. That's why in 1929, Werner Heisenberg from Germany, the Nobel laureate, came all the way to Kolkata to meet poet Rabindranath Tagore. And he said, what we have just finding in quantum physics, how could you write that through poetry? How could you? I mean, Rabindranath said, because I touched the divine through the eternal knowledge of India. So I did it in my internal laboratory of mind and chandas. You are doing it in your external laboratory of machines and algorithms. A time has come to the civilization where the two worlds are meeting each other. The external laboratory of machine science is meeting the internal laboratory of mind sciences. This is a great moment. And Heisenberg just embraces Rabindranath. And that conversation is recorded in a book called The Uncommon Wisdom by Dr. Fritjof Capra, who has also written another great book, The Tao of Physics. So if you read the first chapter, you'll see this conversation between Heisenberg and Tagore. 1929, we are almost completing, we're about to complete 100 years. So this whole column of light has a crown, and in the Vedas, they call it the Ritasya Budna. Budna means foundation. Ritasya Budna. And the lowest point, which hits the terrestrial foundation, like a Shiva Lingam, which is coming from it's called Ahir Budna. Ahir means the serpent. So the same column of light in the lower origin is looking like a dark robe. And it's looking like a serpent. And the same dark robe, which is a dark robe or a serpent at the material level, in the upper crown is looking like a column of light. So At what level you want to see, that is your interpretation. But if you can connect the two Budnas, then it becomes the Skambha. So the whole Rig Veda gives you the foundation of axis, symmetry, and the connection between the two foundations. Axis, symmetry. So these are the tenements of modern architecture today. And all modern architects, from Zaha Hadid to Frank Gehry to Charles Correa to Vittal Bhai Balakrishna Doshi, they all work on axis, symmetry, and distribution of space. These are the vocabularies of Sthapatya Vastuvidya. So the Rig Veda, the first text in the world, provides you the syntax of Vastukala. And that is visible in this, in a detailing. So this is the whole column. So in the lower portion of the column, you are at a lower level, and then the prana and the akasha are reaching different amplitudes. And then it becomes so close that you reach a motamuti level of consciousness where the microcosm opens up to the macrocosm. And then the aspirant, the user, gets an access to the higher knowledge. He becomes like a bird, Khechari Mudra. He becomes a yogi. So from Bhutakasha, you get a ticket to enter the Chidakasha. The Mahaguru, the Sadgurus, gives you the ticket. I mean, you cannot get it by yourself. You can just wait there at the Gurudwar and just wait and wait and wait and wait. And somebody from the other side will come and open up the door. So the whole marriage of spirituality is the marriage between an aspiration from below and a support from above, in the words of Sri Aurobindo. Is an aspiration from below and a support from above. Is the whole topological surge from below, which is architecture, and the collapse or the descent of the mattress from above. Am I making things clear to you? Yeah. So this is the whole foundation. You can see the sloka, the Ritasya Budna and the Ahir Budna. So the serpentine, it's not serpent, allegory of a serpent. So the serpentine foundation is the Kulokandalini, the lower form. So right in the Rig Veda, you have the birth of Tantra. The tantric foundation of Shakti is right there in the Rig Veda from day one. This whole historical interpretation of Tantra being formed later in Indian history as magic and superstition is 100% wrong. It's 100%. So we need to rewrite our Indian history. We need to rewrite, because we have not spent time in the last few hundred years and we have lost our history. So there's so much work to do in Indian knowledge system based on scientific syntax and algorithm. This is just one example of many, many things to be done. In IIT Kharagpur, we have not done everything, nor we have done something. We have just done a few things. We have just started. And these are in some of our publications. So let's move on. So the Vastuvidya, so the background is all set right now. So there is a Purusha in the Chidakasha who is Mahapurusha. And there's a Purusha in the Bhutakasha who is Vastu Purusha, the Vastuspati. So in there, he is the Lord of the cosmos, Mahat, Mahoriyan. And here, he is the Lord of the environment. He is the Vastuspati. And he controls whatever we design. So in this room, for example, there is somewhere a centrality. And that is not geometrical perfectly. It's an understanding, a centrality. You know, if I take you to a big family, and suppose I invite madam to my family and say, madam, this is my father, this is my mother, this is my uncle, this is my auntie, but he is my grandfather who represents the lineage of the family, and if you talk to him, you know about the whole family. So the grandfather or the grandmother represents the Brahmasthanam of the whole family. It doesn't mean that the grandfather has to geometrically sit in the center on a chair and define that center. That center is metaphysical. He can sit, he cannot sit. So there could be a linear and a non-linear approach to that center. So this is actually the Vastuspati Mandala, and the Rig Veda, 7th Mandala, 54 Sutra, and the 55th Sutra expands on the Vastuspurita Mandala. So right in the Srutis, Vastukala starts. And the word Vasa, which means to dwell, Isa Vashyamidam, Vasa, has formed so many words. I'm not reading because we don't have time for them. Vasuvidya, which means the science of earth dwelling, Vasava, who is the lord of art, Vasundhara, which is earth itself, Vasati, its dwelling. If you call it Basti, it becomes squatter settlements. So they have all come from these words. Whereas the Latin and the Greek words are like base, boss, omnibus. In South we have Srinivas. So all these words, they all come from Srinivasam. That means the Lord dwells in the cosmos. He's just not transcendental, but he's also Premamaya, Kripamaya, Dayamaya. He's right inside. He's just not Bhayal, but he's also Dayal. Bhayal, Dayal. So these two sides of the divinity is so. And in ancient Rome, he was known as Vesta, which is, so the ancient Rome at some point of time also had a Shastra like India, which is like Vastu Sat Shastra. And Vesta was the ancient Etruscan, pre-Roman goddess of the science of built environment. That's a separate research altogether. So I am going to share with about 7 small, this is my little work or our little work, and we have checked it again and again and again. So there are about 7 things, 7 principles that comes out of this understanding. One is this principle of recursion, which I've already talked about, so let's not spend time on this. So as above, as below. And somebody picked it up in the Greeks, that was Plato and Protagoras, and then the idea sank in the medieval ages. And then it was picked up again by Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, the Vitruvian man. Man is the measure of all things. Pindame Brahmand. Pindame Brahmand. I measure. If I am not there, who is going to measure this universe? If you are not here in this auditorium, who is going to listen to my lecture? I'm giving you a very crude example. Suppose I just ask you, all of you leave. Please don't mind, this is a very bad example. And suppose I get 10 cats and 15 dogs to come here and sit, and I deliver this lecture. Will that lecture work? It has no existence in the realm of cats and dogs. So that means there is actually no objective universe. It's all subjective. That means my lecture gets reflected in your consciousness, and that is the meaning. And that is called the anthropic principle. So it is anthropocentric, not in evolution, but in the evolution of consciousness. So that means the consciousness which is latent in a dog gets evolved in the human being and becomes bloomed in a rishi. So that means this whole journey of consciousness is the whole. So this is a principle of recursion. And here are some examples. One is 750 AD, right on the Kailashnath temple of Ellora, built by the Rashtrakutas. You see a principle of recursion. So the top of the temple, you can see that the top of the temple reflects the cosmos. So the matrix of the cosmos is footprinted on the top of the temple. So the top of the temple is the lowest point of the universe. The top of the temple is the lowest point of the universe. That is one of the evidence in Western Ghats, Kailashnath. And today, I think some of you know, in a place called Sindhudurg in Ratnagiri, a lot of petroglyphs have been found out, and this has been carbon dated to 12,000 BCE. The Deccan College of Pune has found out, and I've included it as a part of my book, as an annexure. And you can see there are about 12 spokes, and there's a clear hint of the swastika and the anthropic man, which shows somewhere about 14,000 years back, India had a clear-cut knowledge of heliocentrism, the 12 months and Earth's rotation around the sun. If they wouldn't have known this, they could not draw this petroglyph. Right? So right at 14,000 years back, India had a clear knowledge of heliocentrism. So it's a very ancient country. So all these things, 2,000 years back, 3,000 years back, is all fine, but they're not true. We need to look at history in a much more detailed way. There are works by Daniken, mysterious, Graham Hancock, and many other people, but we need to portray it scientifically. Let's move on. So this is the whole recursion, which is actually explained in the Gita. Urdha Moolam Adhashwakam. Urdha Moolam Adhashwakam Ashwatham Prahu Abbayam. So it is Abbayam, that means it's eternal. Abbayam. Bayam means you're spending, it's economics. इधर में 100 रुपया है, spending करते करते खत्म हो गया. But Abbayam means I'm spending continuously. So that means My expenditure patterns in this universe is continuously supported from the Urdhva Moolam, Abhayam. So this is not economics material, this is economics spiritual, Artha Shastra. So this is Akhand Prabaha, Prahur Abhayam, and who understands the connection between the upper and the lower? That is Chanda, Chandangshi. So the tree which I have cut and gone to the Moolam, that tree resprouts again. Please understand this. The tree which I have traced to the root, again the new tree is born, Ashwatham, the Bodhi tree of Buddha, or the Bodhi tree of Pippalad, Maharshi Pippalad. It is all there continuous. Again sprouts with green leaves, and Yasha Parnani, every leaf represents the Chanda of the upper and the above. So the resprouting, the greening, the environmental dynamics of the tree. See this sloka of the Gita. It talks about environmental dynamics, the green environment, the green policies of today. So what the United Nations Environmental Program is talking about in 20th century is there in the Gita for thousands of years. The greening of the environment. Parnani, the leaves, the foliage, which represents the connection. So I have traced the roots, and again I have come back to the new tree. So my new tree contains the seed which comes from the fruit of the old tree. So this is what Tagore says, Tarango milaye jaye, tarango uthe. The waves are collapsing, but the new waves are surging. Kushuma jhodiya pade, kushuma phote. The old flowers are dying, so what? The new flowers are blooming. So life is continuous. Urdhva Moolam Adhashakam Prahur Abhayam. So the cycle is going Abhayam. And Chandangshi Yasya Parnami Yasyam Veda. So somebody who knows that Chanda, he is a Vedavid. He is a Vedavid. He is the Rishi. What a beautiful definition based on rhythms and meters and Chanda. That means he is not mysterious. He is not magical. But he knows the Chandas between the upper crown and the lower crown. He is a Rishi. And who has a full control of it? He is either a Devarshi like Narad or a Brahmarshi like Bhrigu. So they are like the Rishis of the Rishis, Param Rishis. The Mundak Upanishad talks about Param Rishis, the Rishis of the Rishis. I mean, if they come, they can make you a Rishi, make me a Rishi. They are not Rishis, they are Rishis of the Rishis, the Param Rishis. Our entire spirituality of India belongs to the Rishis of the Rishis, the Brahma Rishis and the Devarshis, and their representation, the Rajarshis. The Gita is actually a scripture of the Rajarshis, the Kshatriyas. The Gita is not Brahminical, it's Kshatriya. It's Kshatriya Parampara. Most of our avatars are all Kshatriyas. Rama, Krishna, Aurobindo, Vivekananda. They are all Kshatriyas. So about 90% of our spiritual traditions, our Upanishads are all Khatra. Brahma Teja, okay, but Khatra Virya. It's a combination of the two sides. So most of our history books written in the last 100 years is almost an error where Indian history has been interpreted as Brahminical. That's a fundamental mistake. That's a fundamental mistake in most of the book. Nobody is to be blamed because we have not taken care of it. So let's move on. So this is how we explain the whole thing. So the data of the universe, let me come here. The data of the universe is visible in the movement of the pendulum, which is linear and cyclic. And it's also depicted by the hierarchy of minds, which is explained by Abraham Maslow. That's Maslow's hierarchy of minds. So Sri Aurobindo's hierarchy of minds gets reflected in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the hierarchy of minds are inside, the hierarchy of needs are outside. So this is the whole foundation. And that is depicted in the Rig Veda like a hydrological cycle, like a temperature cycle, like a weather cycle. So the Agni is going up and the Brishti, the Soma, is coming down. So the water below is going up as clouds. So this is Purva Megham. And then again, it's dropping down the rain, and the rain is becoming the rivers are going to the ocean are again becoming clouds, Uttar Megham, and again it's going. And that is how Kalidas composes his Meghdutam. And that is the whole foundation of the Sam Veda. Purva Archik and Uttar Archik. So Purva does not mean east only, it also means past. Uttar does not mean north only, it also means future. So most of our Sanskrit words are space and time. You see that? This is a foundation of science. This is a foundation of a beautifully perfected language system, not a language called Sanskrit, where most of the words have a spatial and a temporal connotation. About 1,000 years before Albert Einstein, such a development was done by the Indian sages, where every word has multiple etymological synonyms. They represent various meanings with different intonations and combination. That is the whole foundation of Sanskrit. And you find that in 1.164. We come to the second depiction, which is the mirror as a footfall. And this is a diagram for which I don't have time to explain. So this is a Surya Mandala. So this is the Dasam. In the Rig Veda, it's called the Dasagya. So the rishis are climbing up to the sun. Navagya Dasagya. If you read Sri Aurobindo's Secret of the Vedas, you'll know. So the past is again becoming the future. Kritasmara, Kratusmara, Kritasmara, Kratusmara. It's mentioned in the Isha Upanishad. Remember what has done in the past. Let us remember what shall be done in the future. And it's always a space-time connect. It's always that is the ending of the Isha Upanishad. Purva Uttara, fast forward, past forward. It's going like this. So this is reflected in the Surya Mandala. And the Surya Mandala, you can see, the Surya Mandala, if you take a linear collapse, you get the 7 rays, which is the septuplet. That is the representation of the Sapta Dhenu, Dhenava, the Sapta Buha, the Sapta Rashmi, the Sapta Chanda, the Sapta Matrikas. There's a foundational truth, and they all converge. This is physics, diffraction to the Ashtama, Bakashtami and Bhag Ashtami, and they represent the word of God. It's there in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and this is depicted as a footfall, So this is how we have. I just presented this thought just a week back in Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Delhi, and I was the only person in that conference who did not know Sanskrit. And then the rest, 99% knew Sanskrit, but at the end of the conference, they liked what I said, so I got a certificate that things are fine and things are not bad. Okay, so this is the whole thing, which is a depiction of the mirror as a footfall. Is there a science? Yes, there is a science, and this is described in the Chandogya Upanishad, where the whole Ekam Sad Vipra Vahuda Vadanti. So it's like a chandelier. I need to move fast. It's like a chandelier. So in the chandelier, how much of light is there? There's only one light. And all the others are glass particles. But when you look at the chandelier, how many lights you see? If there are 100 glass particles, you see 100 lights. If there are 1,000 glass particles, you see 1,000 lights. If there are 1 million glass particles, you see 1 million lights. And in each of those glass particles, you see the light. And that entire light you see by a principle of physics, which you call total internal reflection. So there's one light, Ekam Sat Vipra, which is reflected in thousands of glass particles, Bahuda Vadanti. So the chandelier, the Madhu Chakram, there's one queen bee in the Madhu Chakram, which is controlling. Like Richadi is the queen bee of this conference. And she is I'm just using an example. And we are all the small bees working with her. And we are forming a Madhu Chakra, which is a Mauchak, which is the FDP Yagya. The Yagya is going on. So the Rishis has described the Surya Mandala as a Madhu Chakra. And the nectar of the flower, which is converted into something immortal, which is honey, is called Madhu Vidya. So the principle of Madhu, immortality in the Upanishads, is called the principle of transferring the nectar, Bhutakash, to honey, Chidakash. That is the whole principle. So that principle comes again and again. And all our traditions, all our temples, all our architecture, all our interior decoration, Shish Mahalam of Sufism in Agra Fort or in others, even in Islamic Sufi tradition, they follow that one Noor becoming millions. Islam, they emphasize the multiplicity. So the moon, the lunar side. In India and in Christianity, they emphasize the solar side, Adityam, the day side. But the two sides are together. That's why in Indian calendar, you have both the solar and the lunar. So we are inclusive of Christianity and Islam, and something more than that also. So that is the whole beauty. That is the whole beauty of the Indian ethos. Let's move fast. So from there, we move on to something which is the foundation of Indian architecture, and that is a footprint, which is the mandala. akhanda mandala akaram vyaptam yena characharam tatpadam darshitam yana tasmai se gurudev nama. That means that truth right there, is actually explained by someone who is right here. So that truth has come in my life as a guru. When the job is done, he'll vanish. So Vashdev said to Shukracharya that before you get Brahmagana, give me the Guru Dakshina. Because after Brahmagyana, you won't have a difference between you and me. It will be all gone. So this is a beautiful symbol. So this is a book which I have written. It's a textbook in many colleges. That's not so important. So the mandala is actually the foundation, and the mandala actually becomes a geometry. So this is what we do, architects and vastubids and sutradhars. So the whole cosmic geometry, the movement, is actually implanted. So everything is a chord. Chord means arc. Arch means archery. Archery means jay. Jay ka andar mein matra, measurements kya hai? That is jay matra. That is geometry. That is the evolution. So the whole geometry has evolved from the cosmic footprint. The whole of mathematics, the whole of geometry is an evolution of the Akhanda Mandala. So the entire mathematical principle of Ganita, Shakha, and then going to the roots, Bij Ganita, which is algebra, and its ramification on the drawings, which is Jayamatra, is a whole foundation, the crown of Indian science. And the application of that is Vastukala, architecture. You build a building. You give it a space. So this is, the whole knowledge system is connected. Akhanda Mandala Akaram. So you cannot say this is architecture, that is geometry. It's not reductionist. It's holistic. It's holistic. So Indian knowledge system is essentially a holistic system, where you see rooms, but like in Buddhism, there's a principle called Avatamsaka Sutra. So Lord Buddha gives an example to someone like Shilpa, walks in the lanes, and then sees a house in the horizon, enters the house and finds 20 rooms, enters one of the rooms and sees the whole field where there is a house, walks up to the house, enters the house, finds another 20 rooms. And then he keeps on doing that 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Then the person forgets, when did he start? When did he end? So there is no beginning, there is no end. So this is called Avatamsaka Sutra in Vajrayana Buddhism, which talks about the infinite robes of creation. Akhanda Mandala Akara. It's just going on and on. Brahma Chakra is going. So that is implanted in the geometrical form, and that is the foundation of our temple structures. That is the whole foundation of our temple structures. And this is what the softwares do by virtue of a grid. And even a modern building in New York, if you have gone to New York, you have seen this, the Chrysler building in New York. The Chrysler building in New York is based on these principles of Freemasonic Christianity, which is very close to Indian form of Vastukala or Vastuvidya. Because one portion of European deep esoteric knowledge went to the United States by virtue of Freemasonic. The people, like Priory of the Sign, the Freemasonic, from Isaac Newton to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. So that is a separate research by itself. And the whole temple structure that you see on the top right is a journey from Bhutakasha to Chidakasha. You are moving from the Bhoga Mandira, that means the plane of enjoyment. Chalo mandir mein chalo, gao, khao, prasad piyo. Then dhire, next time, itna halla hulla kya hai, let's go and settle down, let's do some bhajan. Jai Jai Ram, Siya Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Then the next time you go, Jai Jai Ram, Siya Ram, to kafi prank, let's go inside and take calm repose. So you just sit down. Then the fourth visit, you go farther inside and you tell your friend, you go outside, leave me alone. So you're moving from, as Richadi used to say, you're moving from fourth person inquiry to third person inquiry to second person inquiry to first person inquiry. In the words of cybernetics, it is actually cybernetics 1, 2, 3, just reverse. Inquiry says 3, 2, 1. Cybernetics says 1, 2, 3. It's just a question of numbers. And Norbert Wiener in MIT did that. I'll show you in our last slide. So this is how the entire temple structure is ultimately built, which is my last slide. So let's move on. We don't have much time. So this whole thing explains the hierarchy of minds. So the entire Vastukala experience, which is a third and a second person inquiry, is actually the experience of yourself, which is a first person inquiry. So you don't design the environment to change others. You change yourself and you design the environment. That is what Atulji was saying yesterday. In the Bible, St. Luke says, physicians, heal thyself. It's there in Luke, Synoptic Gospel. Physicians, heal thyself. First, Atmanamakshaya, then Jagadhitaya. If you are not Atmagani yourself, and if you keep on giving lectures like me, that I am doing all, then one day you'll go to doomsday. Because you don't have the energy and the circuits and the chaprash and the certificate. Nobody has given you a chaprash. The Guru will say one day, who has asked you to give so many lectures in a month? Maybe once or twice a year, because you have not reached that level of understanding. So this is Indian spirituality. This is Indian clarity. I mean, there has to be a balance between restraint and dissemination. Atmanamakshaya Jagadhitaya. There's a whole foundation of Buddhism, Lord Buddha. There's a whole foundation of Christianity. Die on the cross, the resurrection of the whole world. And this is the whole foundation of the Upanishad, Swami Vivekananda. I mean, all three prophets, Buddha, Christ, and Swami Vivekananda, has said the same thing. Atmanamakshaya Jagadhitaya. So this is the whole hierarchy of minds, and this is actually depicted in the hierarchy of minds in a way which is actually a part of a thing. So it could be either in the form of a temple, from Bhutakasha to Chidakasha, or in the form of a geometrical devolution, Khiti, Up, Tej, Marud, Bum, the geometrical forms, or in the form of an iconic symbolism, the Shiva Lingam, Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, Rudra Granthi, Gauri Pittam, Jyotir Mandalam, then Jyoti Skamba Sutra. So it represents, or in the form of yoga, which is the 6 chakras, the base chakra, then the coccygeal, then the sacral, then the navel, the solar plexus, then the dorsal, then the cervical, kantha, and then the Agya chakra, which is the command zone. And that is where it opens up. And you get into the Khechari Mudra. Then you get out of the body, Videha, and you go beyond. And that is the whole of the medical system, which is Hippocrates. It is used by the World Health Organization today, without knowing what it is. Without knowing. So Indian yoga is already there in the World Health Systems, knowingly, unknowingly, advertently, inadvertently. That is the maja. You cannot suppress truth. Truth remains there. One day when we see, oh, ye to tha. So that means there is nothing called the objective universe. It is all subjective. When I improve, I see things. When I don't improve, I don't see those things. They are already there. I mean, the divine is in front of me, but I have not seen him. But when I am prepared, I see, oh, he was my friend. Tameva bandhushcha shakha tameva. He was my teacher. Tameva mata cha pita tameva. He was my friend. He was everywhere. He was operating. And they say, oh, dekho. And then the Guru says, don't tell it to others because they also need some time, because you need it some time. So don't start preaching. Just remain restrained, because the time has not come for them. Had a time come to you 10 years back, then the Shishya says, no, sir. Then why are you become so spurious and restless? So everything has a time and space. So this is the foundation of Indian spirituality. And this is the foundation of the whole sadhana and the restraint. And this is actually explained by the 2 sides of Indian architecture. It's a part of the book that I have written. So one is the ascent of mind, Agni Shikharam, Arya, aeration. And other is the descent of Amrita. So this is avidya, crossing avidya and going beyond them. That Sri Aurobindo explains this. And that is bringing down, by virtue of vidya, the immortality. The whole combination is the Arya and the Dravida. One is aeration, thermodynamics, the North Indian style of temple. As you move inside the temple, you climb up. And in the South Indian temple, as you move in the temple, you climb down. In a North Indian temple, as you are going in, The space contracts. In the South Indian temple, it becomes an involute. It becomes bigger and bigger, the Khetra Mandala. You see, we don't see. It is there for thousands of years. And there is no divide between this colonial definition of Arya and Dravid. This is the whole foundation of Agni and Soma. Agni and Soma. Rarefaction and condensation. Carnot cycle, thermodynamics. So Carnot cycle and thermodynamics is the foundation of Indian architecture. Foundation. Physics is built environment. Built environment is physics. So I think I have made my point. So that is the ascent of hierarchy of needs. And that is the book by Sri Aurobindo and Abraham Maslow, written by Joseph Vrente. So it's all explained there. So this is the whole aim of Sthapatya Vastuvidya. So this is fire, aeration, Arya, Ardhatu, Arjo, Arya chrome. And the other one is Draba, Drabibhuta, drop, water drops, drips. That is Drabibhuta, Dravinasha in the Rig Veda. So this is a descending hierarchy of minds. And so this is a South Indian form. You see that as opposed to the, not opposed, as complementary to the North Indian form. And the whole thing comes together. Then you see Urdhamulam Adhashakam. So in this diagram, the moon is here. In this diagram, the moon is, this is the elevation in engineering. This is the plan. So if you go by the upper drawing, truth is above you. If you go by the lower drawing, truth is inside you. So the concept of God above becomes the concept of God within. Garva Griham, Antaram, Garva, the dance in Gujarat, Garva, going round and round and round and round, and you get into an ecstasy, and then once in a while you see Lord Krishna at the center, Garva. And that is the whole mystery. And then somebody asked, what was beauty? And he said, Krishna was looking at me and I was dancing with him. And that same question was asked to another person, and he said, Krishna was looking at me. The true answer is, Krishna was not looking at anyone, but he's actually looking at everyone. Sarvatit Sarvamay. That is the whole beauty of the Garva Griha. It's going round and down. So there are two, Urdhamulam, Adhashakam. This is the whole foundation of Indian geometry, transcendental and immanent. It's like a wave equation of Schrodinger. So one is the backward linkage of time, one is the forward linkage of it. This is 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics by Alan Aspect. Quantum entanglement, teleportation. Physics 2022 has proved this year what the Indian rishis had been talking about for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So today's science is helping meta-science. So let's move on. So this is the whole foundation of Bharat Barsha. This is the geographical, the sacred space. You know, it's Trikona with the Himalayan. So it's like a diamond, like this and like this. One triangle has come down and another triangle has gone up. That is a whole geographical space. It's moving like a swastika. And Adi Shankaracharya took the 4 points to install the Char Dham based on the Chatur Tatya. So the Vayu Tattva is the Sringeri Mutt. The Surya Tattva is the Sarada Mutt. The Agni Tattva is the Govardhan Mutt. And the Soma Tattva is the Badri Mutt. That is the whole foundation of our Chatur Vedam. The Charbagh of Christianity, or of Humayun's tomb or Taj Mahal. So Semitic religions had got influenced by India to develop their side of expedition. It is all one. Urdhamulam Adhashwakam. And this is the whole of the sacred space of India, and it comes from there. There's so much to say here, but we don't have the time. I think we should have some question. So this was a debate which was going between Plato and Aristotle. This is School of Athens drawn by Raphael in 14th, 15th century, the Renaissance school. So Plato said Urdhamulam, and Aristotle said Adhashwakam. And they argued. Plato said you need a higher philosophy in your life. Aristotle said no, you have to be grounded, you have to be pragmatic. European civilization in the next 2000 years did not listen to Plato, it became aristocratic. And that is why today we have crisis, economic crisis, cultural crisis, environmental crisis, lifestyle diseases. We have money, no peace. We have imarats, but there is no contentment. We have education, but disjointed. We have all institutions and investments, but no directions. We have Bahiranga, no Antaranga, because Plato is gone. Plato is gone. So Plato was the last person of the Oriental wisdom. I mean, who brought India through Persia and Egypt to Greece, and after that it was lost. So this picture is very, very important. And when you bring the two, it becomes a very sacred diagram. We did this project for Ministry of Culture, and we came out with this, and we found out that the Ashwamedha, which is sacrifice, and then the return, which is Putrishti, are based on this inversion. So in the Ashwamedha, it is Krishna Jajurveda, Urdha Moolam, and in the Putrishti, it is Shukla Jajurveda, Adha Shakam. So the two Yagga architectures represents the ascent and the descent of the human mind. So this is the black and the white. This is quantum physics, black hole and white hole. So what we are thinking as very, very modern science today is right there in the Krishna Jajurveda and the Shukla Jajurveda and the whole foundation of the sacred geometry. So it is there as a part of this. You can download this. It's a part of my personal website, occr.org.in, and you can download all the publications there. They're all available for you. Some of you, like Aniket, knows it. A few people know it. So you can download, because knowledge is not ours. It doesn't belong to IIT Kharagpur. It belongs to the rishis of India. So we don't have a copyright. The copyright belongs to the rishis. That is India. So when you go to Ellora, you don't find Joycean there. Joycean did this painting. India was never. All this patent and copyright, they are all so mundane. They bind you to, you win temporarily, but finally you lose. That is Rajaguna. But when you lose temporarily and finally when you win, that is Satyaguna. So Indian civilization is Swatik. It's so fun. This is the change that is to happen to the pedagogy. Architecture is one such thing. So this is the whole Vastu Purusha Mandala, which is finally, so we have the nano scale, Nunatanama, Nunatama, nano scale, and we have the Brihat, breadth, the higher scale. And the two scales, the macrocosm and the microcosm, compounds the two foundations of the whole thing. And this is what the text that is available. So I would suggest two readings if you are interested. One is by Professor Alice Bonner, who was a friend of Pandit Uday Shankar, who came to IIT BHU and BHU. And she never went back to Paris. She remained in India and she did the exhibitions. And if you go to Kala Bhavan, BHU, you will find her work. So with Sadashiv Sharma and her disciple, Dr. Bettina Baumer. I have met Bettina Baumer about 12 times in Varanasi. She is a Padma Shri. They have written this book called Vastu Sutra Upanishad. So all that I am saying in the last 35-40 minutes, more or less in this book. So this is a more philosophical, artistic book. The other book is by the first PhD of the Department of Architecture, IIT Kharagpur, Dr. BTS Prabhu, Balakrishna Prabhu. He is in NIT Calicut. He is right from IIT Kharagpur, the first PhD of our department. So that is a book by him, a test book of Vastu Vidya. So many of the things that I have shown are also from his book. So this book is poetical, philosophical, the right side of the brain, and that book is structural engineering, the left side of the brain. If you want to understand Vastu Vidya, you need both the books. If you just read one of them, you get lopsided. You lose the balance. And these are some of the people who have contributed to Vastu Vidya in a very big way. Of course, Gandhiji and Tagore. Of course, Tagore and Patrick Geddes. But definitely a great contribution has come from Mother Mira Alfazar, the mother of Pondicherry, the UNESCO Charter and her treatise on Indian environment, and the model township of 50,000, which is Auroville, in which we are working in some way. So let's hope that in the coming 20-30 years, the great remedies. I just wanted to share this with you. It's not a part of Vastu Kala, but it's a part of Indian knowledge system. So these are all Nobel laureates who have talked about a bridge, the necessity of a bridge. And they have said there is a science in the Indian knowledge system, starting with Nobel laureate Erwin Schrödinger, with Nobel laureate Werner Heisenberg, with one of the greatest scientists ever born, Enrico Fermi, and the first scientist who talked about Indian knowledge system, Prana and Akasha, that's Nikola Tesla. And he met Swami Vivekananda in 1893 and continued interacting for about 18 days in Chicago and then in Buffalo. And that is the beginning of Indian knowledge systems, Prana and Akasha. What I said right at the beginning. And then you have Nobel laureate Charles Towne, who came to many ISKCON conferences and gave his deep talks. And then you have Nobel laureate Werner Arber, who spoke in Bigyan Bhavan, and he talked about the necessity of bridging Western science with Indian metaphysics. And then you have Nobel laureate Arthur Leonard, who talked about the work on deep syntaxes of the universe based on Oriental and Indic traditions. So these message is contained in my book. These are pages from the book, and it's followed by other Nobel laureates like Richard Ernst, Daniel Phillips, and many other Nobel laureates like Craig Mello, John Mather, Thomas Schelling, and Lee Hartwell. But they're all great, but the fantastic Nobel laureate is Ilya Prigogine, who writes his book after winning the Nobel Prize. That's called Structure, Stability, and Fluctuation. And when he publishes that book, he puts the statue of Natarajan on the top of the book to describe the foundations of nanochemistry. He says, Dr. Ilya Prigogine says, if there is one diagram in the world which explains the mystery of the universe, it is the dance of the time, Agni and Soma, Amrita and destruction, creation and destruction, which is Soma and Agni. That balance is kept by the dark, and the Indian Orientalist had reached that perfection, not to just talk about it philosophically, but give it a physical expression, which is the whole statue of Nataraja. And there are two great scientists who has used this. One is a Nobel laureate, Dr. Ilya Prigogine, and the second one is Dr. Fritjof Capra, writing his Tao of Physics, the first version. And the third example is 2004, when Anil Kakotkarji was invited by CERN, Particle Physics Center at Switzerland, to take a statue of Natarajan and place it in world's #1 particle physics center, so that the Natarajan expresses the mysteries of quantum physics. So this is a recognition of Indian knowledge systems. We Indians need to be updated. The world is catching up. And we have lost our things, and we need to be updated. So Dr. Arnob Hajra is there, and Arnob and I, we are planning to have a calendar on this. Let's see what we can do. Yeah, there'll be another rattle maybe. So it's already recorded, So this is what comes. So this is Cybernetics 1, third person. And Richadi will like this. This is Cybernetics 2, second person. 2 matches with 2. And this is Cybernetics 3, which is first person. But beyond Cybernetics 3 and first person, there is a fourth Cybernetics, which is impersonal. So third person, second person, first person to personal, and then the personal gets personified and touches the impersonal. So the foundation is impersonal personified. Amurta Murta, Amurta Murta. So there is one in the upper crown, one in the lower crown. So one is Akhanda Mandalakaram and Tatpadam Dashitam Jana Tasmai Siguruve Namo. I don't see you, but I see you. I don't see you, but I see you. I see you, but yet I don't understand you. So it's that constant iteration. I know I am you, you and me, but you are the ocean, I'm only a drop of water. This is Ramanujam, Vishishtadvaita Bhada. This is not exactly Shankara. And this is Kashmiri Shaivism also, Shaktadvaita Bhada. I am Advaitam, but I must remember I am only a drop of water in that ocean. And in that ocean there are waves, who are the Brahmarshis, who are not drops of water, they are waves. But the ocean is much beyond that. Chit Shamudra. So I'm coming back to Gorakshnathji, where he says, Antar Shunna Bahir Shunna, Shunna Kumbha Ivambare, Antar Purna Bahir Purna, Purna Kumbha Ivanabe. I hope by now you're able to more or less understand what I was trying to say again and again. So when you build a house, when you build an institution, when you build anything, the whole purpose is to create an environment. So the Doha goes like this, Manasthira, Jaha Jaha Manasthira, Taha Taha Manah Mandira. So the whole purpose is, mandir means is a physical space where you go and calm your mind. And one day when you get very developed, you may not go to a temple. Your bedroom can be your place of meditation. Anywhere you sit, it will be your asana. But that's a very highest, a very advanced stage. That is a very advanced stage. You move on to cybernetics 3. But we are all kindergartens in yoga, so cybernetics 1, we are fluctuating between cybernetics 1 and cybernetics 2. So that is where we are. So finally we have to reach the temple of temples. And Swamiji says, all these resonations of logic, bundles of metaphysics, all these theologies and ceremonies may have been good in their own times, but let us try to make things simpler and bring down the golden days, the Satya Yuga, back to the universe again, when every man will be a worshipper and the reality in every man will be the object of worship, and the human body becomes the highest temple of God. The human body becomes the mandiram. So the whole of Vastu Kala, building outside, finally takes us to building inside. That is the whole objective of Vastu Vidya, Sthapatya Vidya. Thank you very much.
Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for so wonderful lecture. It was completely new and very interesting. My question is, you mentioned about the swastik sign. What is the significance of swastik sign? Like I heard that when it rotates, it appears like galaxies. So
you're right.
Is it right?
Yeah. The swastik sign, one of the meaning is that the center of the swastika is the pole star, Dhruva Nakshatram. And one of the armature is the Saptarshi Mandala, the L. And the 4 quadrants are the movements in spring, autumn, summer, and winter. So the cosmic diagram of the Saptarshi Mandala in the celestial orb, in the 4 wings, either in a Varsha Chakra or in a Yoga Chakra or in the precision of the equinoctial, is implanted. So if you go to Bhagavata Purana, you'll find that description of the Shishumar Chakra, the galactic dolphin, Shishumar, the galactic dolphin, is rotating around the Dhruva Nakshatra, and the Saptarshi Mandalas, the 7 sages, are constantly rotating from infinity to infinity, from times immemorial to immemorial, thinking about the Kalyanam. They are Kalyaneshwars. They're all Shivas by themselves. They're all micro Shivas, macro Shivas, and they're constantly. Now, this word constant is not your and our definition of constant, because they're in that level of time. They're in the Brahma. They are all Brahmans. So they are called Brahma Rishis, because they're in the macrocosmic time cycles. So one day and night is like a whole kalpic dissolution and recreation. So they're constantly moving in that warp. But this is a space and time which we cannot understand at that level. So it's dropped down to a small diagram called swastika. So when the Indus Valley seal depicts the swastika about 100 times, hundreds of seals or tens of seals have been found out, we are quite sure that the Indus Valley civilization was a Vedic civilization. Otherwise, how will Indus Valley civilization? Either the Indus Valley civilization was synchronous with the Vedic civilization, or the Vedic civilization was prior to the Indus Valley civilization. Either or maybe both. So this is what you call semantics and semiotics, and doing research based on epigraphy and iconography. So research is just not mathematics. There are a lot of other branches through which you can prove your point. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
What did the ancient people think that this is a stone that is something beyond? What is that factor that we can understand today?
Yeah. So in the Jyotirlingam, it's an intriguing question. There are 2 bipolar definitions of the Jyotirlingam. One is Sayambhu, that means it sprouts from below, from the Prithvi Chetana. The another definition is it is Brahmanda. It's coming from the cosmos, like a meteorite or a stone. But the Vedic definition is both. So what is coming from above is actually corresponding to the one from below. You are very young. You're not supposed to see this movie. It's called 2001 Space Odyssey, a movie that was made by Stanley Kubrick about 40 years back. Anyone has seen that movie? Space Odyssey, yeah. Stanley Kubrick, and a young guy, his name was George Lucas, who finally went to MIT lab and developed with Spielberg. The next movies like E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So have you seen the Close Encounters of the Third Kind? So in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you'll see that in a California laboratory, the scientists are trying to find out the sonic vibration through which they can contact the extraterrestrials. And then someone tells them, you hear similar vibrations in India. So the group of scientists from US comes to India in the Narmada Valley, and they see the yogis doing chanting that sound. That is I still remember because I saw that movie about 25 times. So so this is the whole thing. This is the whole thing, and this connects the same thing, the internal and the external. So the Jyotirlingam is actually the Skambha Sutra, which in my little capacity, I just gave you this. So that is the whole pillar of light, which looks linear, but if you go away, it is actually non-linear. It's cyclic. It's actually helical. It is like this. I mean, when I'm walking on the earth, I see everything flat. But is that the reality? That is a geocentric interpretation. The moment I move on to heliocentric, I see non-linear functions. And then there's a third level, which is galactocentric. I go beyond the solar system. I see my galaxy as one of many, intergalactic space, that is dark matter. And that is where the two Nobel laureates are working. One Nobel laureate, that's Robert Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, which is a Nobel Prize, and their work on objective reduction function. Just a few days back, they had a fantastic paper where they're saying that the evolution of consciousness within the human body is just not dependent on the body, but it's also dependent on the cosmos. It's dependent on the cosmos. You see, the Nobel laureates are bringing us back to the ancient wisdom. Check Hameroff, Penrose, you'll find out what I'm saying. Objective reduction function. So the whole objective is reduced to a subjective reality. That's what they're trying to say.
So, good morning, sir. So my questioning, being an architect, whenever you think of something developing, so whether you first look on the physical perspective or the ethical development, what comes in your mind first, being an architect of class 1 level, executive level?
Physical and ethical. In
Yes.
fact, the two things has
Is
to
there,
come. Yeah.
pardon me, is there any counterbalance taking place, whether this is going to be actualized or this is what I'm thinking in a supernatural level that should have an ethical brilliance? At
Have
the same
you-
time, the
Okay.
physical constraints are there.
I'm just asking a question. You don't have to answer this. Have you read the book called The Fountainhead by?
No, sir. No,
Okay,
sir.
okay. So you'll see the fountain here. The Fountainhead is actually the character is Howard Rock, and he represents a great architect in the United States, Frank Lloyd Wright. A movie was also made in Bengal by Uttam Kumar and others. It's called Surya Toran, and so you'll see the Howard Rock is actually designing a house. It symbolizes the falling water in Pennsylvania. Falling water. It's a very famous house. So Howard Rock goes to the site. Do you know how many times? I mean, Frank Lloyd Wright. He goes to the site about 200 times. 200. He just goes and goes, and he slowly moves from the first order cybernetics, which is the third person inquiry, to the second order and he stops when he gets something from the site. That means the site is responding. It's Avatar. Iowa has responded to you. Avatar movie. Have you seen that movie? James Cameron, the director here. So the mother spirit of the universe has responded to you. The end of the movie, that girl is saying to that boy, who is the Avatar. That means the whole nature, he's getting a clarion call from the nature. So Frank Lloyd Wright got that. So what happens? Then design becomes psychosomatic. So one is physical, which is somatic. The other is psychic, which is ethical, moral, ethical, cultural, and then finally spiritual. Spiritual is a very far level. We talk about spiritual. It is actually a very high level of development. It happens where you're in the apex of cultural development. Then only. So ethics The ethics of visiting a site 50 times, 100 times, understanding us. How many architects design the site 10 times this day? How many architects actually talk to a chaiwala or some housemates before designing a house or a housing complex these days? How many? Probably one or two, or maybe no. Because we have become so ordained and burdened by the material rat race. We don't have time to concentrate. We are doing so many things. We have so many things on the table that we don't have our mind in any one single thing. So there is no first person inquiry.
There is always a compromise between the civil engineering and the architectural brilliance, you can say.
Yeah, both are same. One is same. I mean, mera deha mein ek hai asthi marja, the structural things, and the other is the skin and the beauty. The bone has no meaning with the skin. The skin has no meaning without the bone. The bone is the civil engineering. The skin is the architecture. The final human being is a combination of structure and aesthetics. Thank you.
I am not a who are architect. For my curiosity, you have referred Rigveda and all the Vedas throughout your lecture, not mentioned any text of Vastu, like Jyotisha, etc.
Mhm. Yeah. If you just give me another session,
Okay,
I'll come
sir.
to that.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, because if I straight get into the Shastras without this reference, there's no foundation. So this was a foundational, I'm not claiming that, this was a slightly foundational talk. Yes.
I wanted to understand the idea of sustainability in respect to the architectural and within Indian knowledge system.
Yes. So this the whole iterative connection, somehow I think I told you the Akhanda Mandalakaram, coming from the highest to the lowest and going back to the highest. This water cycle you saw, the hydrological cycle, which is also the temperature cycle, the cycle of the clouds, the cycle of the cropping seasons, the cycle of the farmlands, the 2 or the 3 cropping, the cycle of making buildings as per the cropping. So which are your built lands, which are your non-built lands, which are your green field and which should remain as a brown field. See how you come from that highest knowledge to the lower knowledge. That is the whole principle of sustainability. Yeah, so you have to understand when you are designing, suppose I'm designing on a particular site in IIT Kharagpur. I have to know where IIT Kharagpur. I cannot use the same principles of architecture that I do in Kerala because this is northeast and that is southwest first. The second thing is I have to look at the microclimatic zone of Kharagpur because it's a part of Chota Nagpur. So we have Odisha, the marines on this side, and we have Chota Nagpur belt towards Jharkhand on the other side. And we have the arid lands of Koraput on this side and Bengal, Murshidabad on this side. Kharagpur sits right between. So all our seasons are controlled by the microclimate. So we have to draw a Parivesh Vastupurusha Mandala of Kharagpur and understand the geo-microclimate and then nest my site on it. And then find out the Uttarayanas and Dakshinayanas, which are your solstices, azimuths, and altitude. So you design a room suppose you're designing a house, so you design a room which is a winter bedroom, another room could be a summer bedroom. You design the kitchen as per the Agni Kon, you design the lecture or the library room and your laptop room, maybe in the Vayu Kon. So all these functions that you do are based on the terrestrial climatic cycle. Because your physical developments are connected with the physical developments of nature. That is the beginning of sustainability. And like Frank Lloyd Wright or Howard Rocket have visited that site 200 times, you have to sit with your design at least 50 times. It is like a poetry. You revisit it, and it starts. It's like tapasya. It's japam, na? Om Namo Bhagavate. One day karke ho jayega. 1 day, 1 month, 1 year, 10 years, intense tapasya, 25 years, then you reach it. So everything is repetitive, rhythmical. That is sustainability. Yeah.
Sir, I just want to know this swastika you drew we generally are using that swastika in the north side. is that other swastika form.
Yes,
the
yes.
Inverted form.
Yeah,
is also
we have a book on the swastika, madam. You can download it from the net. Swastika IIT Kharagpur. It's about we did it under Sandhi, and the book has been successful to reach Harvard University also. Some of the scholars have taken it. Go through that book and then come to the last 25 pages. Your answers are all mentioned there. Because if I start opening up, it will take another 5-10 minutes, and I can do that if Didi gives me a permission. But
I leave it to you.
yeah, so the whole thing is based on, so there, if you go to Vishwavarati, Rabindranath has used both the swastikas, clockwise and anti-clockwise. So which means he has talked about a stillness in the center, which gets cross-cancelled by the two swastikas. So one is forward linkage of time, going with creation. That means my grandfather, my father, I, my sons, daughters, it's going like this. And another is tracing the root back, going from my son to me, to my grandfather, to my great-grandfather. I'll try to prove it mathematically. I wish I had a chalk and a blackboard here. If you look at a linear programming equation, you get y is equal to a plus xb. Everybody follows it? Y is equal to a plus xb. So a is the intercept, the value of y, which is not dependent on the value of x, and b is the slope of the value of y with respect to the x. So there's a portion in the equation where y, though being a dependent variable, is independent of the x. That is the intercept. And there's a portion in the equation where the y is growing with every input of x. But the sum total growth is a combination of a plus xb, which means the sum total growth is the history that equation has inherited from something. Otherwise, how y will get a value of a, which is the intercept, which has come from the past to the present, or from the present to the past. That is called Purva Archika. And the xb is now it's going to get this value, y will get some value. Another value of x, y will get y2, x3, y3, and you plot the diagram. But the total picture is a plus xb. So that means it's a combination of the backward and the forward linkage of time. So when I concentrate on you, for example, madam, I'm just doing something without taking your permission. When I concentrate on you, I see that from you, from your family, it's quite possible Richadi has evolved. So I'm coming to the present. But then I find out it's just not you and Richadi. I go to your roots in Assam, in Punjab and others, and there's a much deeper legacy. So when I'm concentrating on you, I am trying to justify the present and the future, all that she'll do in the next 10, 15, 20 years, in light of all that I know from you, by looking at your family, your parampara, your lineage, your environment. Are you getting me what I'm trying to say? So it's a combination of, so every moment is a combination of the backward and the forward linkage of time. That is Schrodinger's wave equation. A plus bi and a minus bi. It's called a complex number conjugate. And this is exactly the Nobel Prize in 2022, Allen Aspect. So everything that we see has one teleportation in the past and one teleportation in the future. And what we see today is a combination of the two teleportations. So actually we don't see what we see. We see a combination of the two. So everything that we see is a combination of Purva Uttar, Uttar Purva. That is a Samveda.
Thank you. We have Dr. Shankar Pratim ji, our next speaker.
Yes,
and I'm sorry to intervene, but I have...
Yeah, I should say something. So Shankho, Professor Bhattacharya and I, we together have, in fact, it is he who is holding the course, a course called the Introduction to Vastuvidya, Sthapatyvidya and everything. And by his grace, by his diligence, by his dedication, I am running around in Hazard things. We have something close to 517 or 540 students in last two years. And yeah. And they come from all engineering circles. So knowingly, unknowingly, Ichchakrita, Anichchakrita, students are getting interested to know that A part of, so that they can do an XB. So their full growth is A plus XB. That is Y. That is the definition of Y. And that is where you become happy. If you know your past with respect to your future, if you know your future with respect to your past, you'll see, I'll see, she will see, everyone will see. That is actually the seed of happiness. You know why you are doing this, and you know what you have to do in the future. That is the whole thing. Thank you.